Since achieving independence in 1966, the island nation of Barbados has transformed itself from a low-income economy dependent upon sugar production, into an upper-middle-income economy based on tourism and the offshore sector. Barbados went into a deep recession in the 1990s after 3 years of steady decline brought on by fundamental macroeconomic imbalances. After a painful readjustment process, the economy began to grow again in 1993. Growth rates have averaged between 3% to 5% since then. The country's three main economic drivers are tourism, the international business sector, and foreign direct investment. These are supported in part by Barbados operating as a service-driven economy and an international business center. By the end of 2012, the Barbados economy still exhibited signs of weakness, with their main export being liquor, closely followed by frozen fish and preserved milk to Nigeria, with nearly three-quarters of the imports originating from there. Although it is often quoted that Barbados main produces sugar, there are only 2 working sugar factories remaining in the country. At the end of 2013, Barbados' economy continued to exhibit signs of weakness. History. Pre-independence. Since the first settlement by the British in 1625, through history the economy of Barbados was primarily dependent on agriculture. It had been recorded that minus the marshes and gully regions, during the 1630s much of the desirable land had been deforested across the entire island. Quickly Barbados was then divided into large estate plantations, and using indentured labour mainly from the British Isles for the cultivation of tobacco and cotton crops were first introduced. The island, facing a large amount of competition from the North American colonies and the neighbouring West Indian islands, switched to the crop of sugarcane. Cultivation of sugarcane was quickly introduced by the exiled Jewish community which immigrated into Barbados from Dutch Brazil during the mid-17th century. The introduction of sugarcane became the single best move for the Barbados economy at the time. The economy boomed and Barbados had become populated with so many windmills that the island had the second highest density of windmills per square mile in the world, second only to the Netherlands. For about the next 100 years, Barbados remained the richest of all the European colonies in the Caribbean region due to sugar. The prosperity in the colony of Barbados remained regionally unmatched until sugarcane production caught up in geographically larger countries such as Haiti, Jamaica and elsewhere. Despite being eclipsed by larger makers of sugar, Barbados continued to produce the crop well into the 20th century, and to this day. With the emancipation of African slaves in the British Empire in 1834, thereafter many Barbadians started to place more emphasis on upward mobility and strong education to combat plantation living. During the 1930s, politicians in Barbados started a push for more self-government, along with Barbados seeking to retain more of the profits from economic growth within the country. Much of the profits were being repatriated by the British government to the United Kingdom. As the 1940s-1950s rolled around, Barbados moved towards developing political ties with neighbouring Caribbean islands. By 1958, the West Indies Federation was created by Britain for Barbados and 9 other Caribbean territories. The federation was first led by the Premier of Barbados. However, the experiment ended by 1962. Later Barbados tried to negotiate several other unions with other islands, yet it became likely that Barbados needed to move on. The island peacefully negotiated with Britain its own independence and became a sovereign nation at midnight on 30 November 1966. Post-independence, after the country became independent of the United Kingdom on 30 November 1966, sugarcane still remained a chief moneymaker for Barbados. The island's politicians tried to diversify the economy from just agriculture. During the 1950s-1960s, visitors from both Canada and the United Kingdom started transforming tourism into a huge contributor for the Barbadian economy. The man-made deep-water harbour port at Bridgetown had been completed in 1961, and thereafter the island could handle most modern ocean-going ships for shipping sugar or handling cargoes at the port facility. As the 1970s progressed, global companies started to recognize Barbados for its highly educated population. In May 1972, Barbados formed its own central bank, breaking off from the East Caribbean Currency Authority. By 1975, the Barbadian dollar was changed to a new fixed, constant rate of exchange rate with the US dollar, with the rate being changed to present-day $1 equals $1.98. By the 1980s, a growing manufacturing industry was seen as a considerable earner for the Barbados economy, with manufacturing then being led by companies such as Intel Corporation and others. The manufacturing industry contributed greatly to the economy during the 1980s and early 1990s. Under the 1993 Wage and Price Protocol, workers and unions assented to a one-time cut in real wages of about 9% and agreed to keep their demands for future pay raises in line with increases in productivity. Firms promised to moderate their price increases, the government maintained the parity of the currency, and all parties agreed to the creation of a National Productivity Board to provide better data on which to base future negotiations. In the early 1990s, the country's economy was hit hard when real GDP per capita declined by 5.1% per year between 1989 and 1992, partly due to the 1990 oil price spike. Barbados entered into an agreement with the International Monetary Fund financial assistance after a long and hard period of negotiations between the IMF, the government of Barbados, labor unions and employers. This led to a protocol on wages and prices in 1993. This helped prevent an inflationary spiral and restored the island's international competitiveness, thereby leading to a period of long-term economic growth of 2.7% between 1993 and 2000. As one of the founding members, Barbados joined the World Trade Organization on 1 January 1995. Following the membership in the World Trade Organization, the government of Barbados aggressively tried to make the Barbados economy fully WTO compliant. This led to collapse of much of the manufacturing industry of Barbados during the late 1990s in favor of many companies like Intel and others moving to lower-cost Asian economies. During the late 1990s, more companies started to become interested in Barbados' offshore sector, until it overtook sugar as the new chief moneymaker. In 1999-2000, the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development blacklist was circulated with Barbados listed in error. The negative fallout stymied new investment into Barbados' offshore sector Barbados for near 2 years as Barbados authorities acted swiftly, successfully proving that Barbados' economy was regulated sufficiently to ward off financial criminal activity and that it was not a tax haven, as charged, but instead a low-tax regime. As the global recession hit in 2001, the offshore sector in Barbados slightly contracted further, thereby making tourism as the new chief moneymaker. After having earlier eclipsed manufacturing and sugarcane, the government of Barbados further changed legislation to transform the Barbados economy into one which fosters investment, leading to several new hotel developments. The government continues to try maintaining constraint from personal involvement in the hotel activity and instead seeks private investment into the Barbados economy for future growth. Economic analysis of the Barbadian economy. This has included such firms as Standard & Poor's and Moody's. Current. As of 2008, Barbados has a GDP of $5.466 billion, a GDP of $3.777 billion, a GDP real growth rate of 1.5%, and a per capita PPP of $19,300. The GDP is composed of the following sectors: agriculture 6%, industry 16%, and services 78%. As of 2001, it had a labor force of 128,500, of which 10% were in agriculture, 15% in industry, and 75% in services. The unemployment rate in 2003 was 10.7%, and the inflation rate in 2007 was 5.5%. The Barbadian government had estimated revenues of $847 million in 2000, and expenditures of $886 million. The industrial production growth rate was -3.2%. Offshore finance and informatics are important foreign exchange earners, and there is also a light manufacturing sector. The government continues its efforts to reduce the unacceptably high unemployment rate which it met in the 1990s, encourage direct foreign investment, and privatize remaining state-owned enterprises. The main factors responsible for the improvement in economic activity include an expansion in the number of tourist arrivals, an increase in manufacturing, and an increase in sugar production. Recently, offshore banking and financial services also have become an important source of foreign exchange and economic growth. Economic growth has led to net increases in employment in the tourism sector, as well as in construction and other services subsectors of the economy. The public service remains Barbados' largest single employer. Total labor force has increased from 126,000 in 1993 to 140,000 persons in 2000. And unemployment has dropped significantly from over 20% in the early 1990s to 9.3% at the end of 2000. The Barbados government encourages the development in financial services, informatics, e-commerce, tourism, educational and health services, and cultural services for the future. In 2000, based on Barbados' level of growth, Barbados was supposed to become the world's smallest developed country by 2008. This had then been restated as being achievable by around 2025. Wages. Although Barbadians have been ranked as being on the high end of wages compared to those in the Americas, prices for food, goods and services are also extremely high. The only legislated minimum wage in Barbados is for shop assistants, where wages can be no less than $5 per hour. In October 2009, Dr. Dalil Worrell, who later became the replacement governor of Barbados' Central Bank of Barbados and was executive director of the Center for Money and Finance at the UWI Cave Hill campus, revealed that the average Barbadian now earns between $200 and $499 per week. In 2010, Barbados' population was tabulated at some 281,968, with 80% at working age, yet less than half were actually registered as employed. Of these, the overall estimates of his finds showed that there was a roughly 4,400 workers who earned less than $200 per week. There were 32,800 workers who earned between $200 and $499 a week. About 19,100 workers who earned from $500 to $999. 3,700 workers who earned between $1,000 and $1,300, and 4,100 who earned more than $1,300 a week. Taxation. General. In 1997, Barbados implemented a general taxation which covers most items. Known as the value-added tax, it covers almost all items at a 17.5% tax rate and an 8.75% for hotel accommodations, exported goods and services, prescription drugs and a few other specific items are zero-rated under the legislation. The VAT replaced several other taxes such as the consumption tax, surcharge, excise tax and an environmental levy. People operating under Barbados' VAT regime must be registered for VAT, and from the 1st of December 2010, the threshold for VAT registration has been $80,000. The island continues to wean off of taxes outside of the VAT system. In 2002, the Barbados government increased the level of people in Barbados who were exempt from having to pay taxes on their homes. This has steadily grown, with the island heading for a possible rate of 0% taxation in all other areas. The government has also toyed with the idea of making retirement savings as tax-exempt, to encourage Barbadians to spend less on goods and to encourage Barbadians to save more income as they once used to. Building and landowners are liable to land tax on the market value of their property at rates currently ranging from 0.1% to 0.75% on all properties, and there are approximately 115,000 parcels listed. Exemptions include Crown land, University of the West Indies, religious and benevolent organizations, cemeteries, etc. Personal income tax was lowered from 20% to 17.5% in 2012 and applied on income of less than $30,000, with a rate of 35% apply on income over $30,000, and individuals who are both resident and domiciled in Barbados are taxed on their worldwide income. Generally, persons paying salaries or wages or other emoluments must withhold tax from remuneration paid to employees. Every individual between the ages of 16 and 65, who is employed in Barbados, must be insured under the National Insurance and Social Security Act, and contributions are determined as a percentage of insurable earnings, up to a maximum of $4,090 per month or $944 per week, up to 13.5%. A new tax, called the Municipal Solid Waste Tax, was introduced and took effective in 2014. Tax on income, profits and capital gains include income tax, corporate tax, withholding tax, and insurance premium tax. Tax on goods and services include consumption tax, excise taxes, value-added tax, hotel and restaurant tax, other taxes on goods and services. Corporation tax rates charge regular companies 25% and small companies 15%. Employers must remit tax withheld from employees' emoluments to the Department of Inland Revenue by the 15th day of the month following that in which the tax was deducted. Stamp duty tax is still levied on sale of shares of companies listed on the Barbados Stock Exchange, on sale of real estate, leases and shares in public companies, and on mortgages. Bilateral treaties. Barbados has several bilateral tax treaties, mostly aimed at removing double taxation on companies that operate in the Barbados economy. Since Barbados is at times considered an expensive place to conduct business, the treaties are mainly a measure to provide some savings to international businesses operating in Barbados. Some of the countries which Barbados has taxation agreements with are Austria, Botswana, Canada, China, CARICOM, Cuba, Finland, Luxembourg, Malta, Mauritius, Mexico, Netherlands, Norway, Panama, Seychelles, Spain, Sweden, Switzerland, the United Kingdom, the United States and Venezuela. Source: Barbados government website containing the text of the majority of the above tax treaties. The bilateral tax treaty negotiated with Canada in particular has been a political football for the government of that country. The aim was mainly for companies like the Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, Royal Bank of Canada, and Scotiabank, which, when combined, control a healthy majority of Barbados' local commercial banking sector. In essence, the treaty makes the economy of Barbados almost an unofficial part of the Canadian economy, and it was aimed at allowing Canadian companies to extract profits back to Canada more easily. During the Canadian national elections of 2003 and 2006, it was cited that the former Minister of Finance and later Prime Minister Paul Martin had international shipping companies that operated in Barbados' offshore sector under the bilateral treaty, possibly saving his company from higher taxes in Canada. Primary industries. Agriculture about 16,000 hectares, or 37.2% of the total land area, are classified as arable. At one time, nearly all arable land was devoted to sugarcane, but the percentage devoted to ground crops for local consumption has been increasing. In 1999, 500,000 tons of sugarcane were produced, down from the annual average of 584,000 tons in 1989–91. In 2001, sugar exports amounted to $22 million, or 8.4% of total exports. Major food crops are yams, sweet potatoes, corn, edas, cassava, and several varieties of beans. Inadequate rainfall and lack of irrigation has prevented the development of other agricultural activity. Although some vegetable farming takes place on a commercial scale, some cotton is also grown in drier parts of the island. But until cotton can be picked by machine, it is unlikely that output will rise to its former level. Animal husbandry, livestock rearing, isn't a major occupation in Barbados, chiefly because good pasture has always been scarce and imported animal feed is expensive. The island must import large quantities of meat and dairy products. Most livestock is owned by individual households. Estimates for 1999 showed 23,000 head of cattle, 41,000 sheep, 33,000 hogs, 5,000 goats, and 4 million chickens. Poultry production in 1999 included 9,000 tons of meat and 1,000 tons of hen eggs. Apart from self-sufficiency in milk and poultry, the limited agricultural sector means that Barbados imports large amounts of basic foods, including wheat and meat. Fishing. The fishing industry employs about 2,000 persons, and the fleet consists of more than 500 powered boats. The catch in 2000 was 3,100 metric tons. Flying fish, dolphin fish, tuna, turbot, kingfish, and swordfish are among the main species caught. A fisheries terminal complex opened at Oistins in 1983. Forestry. Fewer than 20 hectares of original forests have survived the 300 years of sugar cultivation. There are an estimated 5,000 hectares of forested land, covering about 12% of the total land area. Roundwood production in 2000 totaled 5,000 cum, and imports amounted to 3,000 cum. In 2000, Barbados imported $35.3 million in wood and forest products. Mining deposits of limestone and coral were quarried to meet local construction needs. Production of limestone in 2000 amounted to 1.5 million tons. Clays and shale, sand and gravel, and carbonaceous deposits provided limited yields. Hydraulic cement production totaled 267,659 tons in 2000, up from 106,515 in 1996. Oil production is also undertaken in Barbados, with much of the onshore activity taking place in Woodbourne, St. Philip,